Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Governor Snyder, over the past 2 years, you and the individuals you handpicked to carry out your administration's actions missed so many opportunities along the way to protect the people of Flint. When the water changed color to brown and orange, your administration said the water was safe. When people reported rashes, hair loss, odor, and even sewage, your administration said the water was safe. When E. coli and fecal bacteria were found in the water and boil water alerts were distributed, your administration said the water was safe. When a harmful byproduct of disinfection in the water began to spike after the switch, your administration said the water was safe. When Legionnaire's disease began to infect and later kill numerous citizens, your administration said the water was safe. Governor, don't you have a moral responsibility to resign?
My commitment is to fix the problem. This is a case where we should have demanded more answers. I said that in my opening statement.
And don't you have a moral responsibility as the governor of an administration that failed and poisoned its own people? Don't you have the moral responsibility to resign?
What I would say is when you have experts that you relied on, they failed. They worked for me, so you have a responsibility for that. I kick myself every day wishing I would have demanded more answers and asked more questions. But to put it in context, when something bad happens, and this is a terrible tragedy, this has been the humbling experience of my life,
I believe for the citizens of Flint, it's been far worse than just a humbling experience.
To walk away from it, I want a commitment to, I'm making a commitment to solve this problem because the Flint people deserve better.
I think that answer speaks for itself. I think that ultimately when people are at the head of a government, they have to take responsibility for their administration's failures.
All right. The mayor asked you repeatedly to come to Flint during the crisis. Do you admit today you didn't show up for more than 7 months after he asked you?
Actually, I'm not familiar. I'd have to check my schedule.
Well, that's what he says. You didn't go to Flint until October 2015. Is that right?
I don't know if that's correct or not.
You don't know. You admit here today to seeing headline after headline about health problems, hair loss, rashes, E. coli, bacteria, sewage, Legionnaire's disease. Did you read any of those stories, Governor Snyder?
Congressman, I read a number of those stories. What I would tell you is those stories, we would follow up on them and continue to get reaffirmation from career bureaucrats that the water was safe. That was wrong.
Do you admit here today that more cases of Legionnaire's disease were reported since the switch to Flint River than, quote, all the cases in the last 5 years or more combined? Do you admit that?
Yes, and that's why I provided a table that shows a number of these cases were at healthcare facilities. In terms of the numbers, there were 87 cases in the 2-year period.
You admit here today that even after the whole world knew that Flint residents were exposed to unimaginable levels of lead, you did not declare a state of emergency until January 2016. Isn't that true?
I took immediate action. As soon as I learned there was a lead issue, we started issuing filters to people, doing water testing, doing blood testing.
Governor
and to be open
Snyder,
with you, I wish more would have been done.
Plausible deniability only works when it's plausible, and I'm not buying that you didn't know about any of this until October 2015. You were not in a medically induced coma for a year. And I've had about enough of your false contrition and your phony apologies. Susan Hedman from the EPA bears not 1/10 of the responsibility of the state of Michigan and your administration, and she resigned, and there you are, dripping with guilt, withdrawing your paycheck, hiring lawyers at the expense of the people, and doing your dead-level best to spread accountability to others and not being accountable. It's not appropriate. People who put dollars over the fundamental safety of the people do not belong in government. And you need to resign too, Governor Snyder.
What you're saying, right? I mean, they're not like us. I mean, they just know somebody, they say chief of staff, that sounds like somebody very important, sounds like somebody that would answer directly to the governor. I mean, you can kind of understand that concern, can you?
I absolutely do, sir, and I'm going to have to live with this my entire life.
On your website, but Governor, you know what? You know, I've heard you say that, but I got to tell you, their children have got to live with it, the damage that has been done for the rest of their lives. And it is painfully painful to think that a child could be damaged until the day they die, and that their destiny has been cut off and messed up. So, yeah, you have to live with it, but many of these children will never be what God intended them to be when they were born and conceived. I just have a few more questions. On your website, you say to the people of Michigan, quote, "We will learn from this experience, but an entire generation has been poisoned." Governor, what are those children supposed to learn from your utter lack of let's say from this incident? What are they supposed to learn?
One of the terrible parts of all this is there's a huge issue in addition to all their medical issues and educational issues, as you mentioned, sir, but there's a question of trust in government.
Yeah.
And there's good reason for them to ask that question. And that's going to take a huge amount of time to earn back, if it can be earned back. And it involves getting third-party experts such as Professor Edwards and Dr. Mona to be part of the process so people can have confidence in people they trust that were the heroes that helped bring this issue up.
The document is redacted, but we can see that number 36 on the list, number 36 on the list was the Flint water system. So, Governor, Flint water was not your first priority. It was not in the top 10, wasn't even in the top 20, not even in the top 30. Flint was number 36. Shouldn't the children and the residents of Flint have been higher on your priority list, Mr. Governor?
In retrospect, with it becoming a true safety issue with the lead issue, it should have been higher. That was not the issue at the time.
Now, Mr. Governor, we also know what you do prioritize. When things got rough for you and your administration started being investigated by law enforcement, you got the people of Michigan to pay your legal fees. Governor, do you admit here today that you have asked the people of Michigan for more than $1 million to pay for your criminal and civil defense fees?
Yes.
And it makes me sick to think you found a way to have the state of Michigan pay over $1 million in legal fees, yet you thought so little of the people in Flint that you could not be bothered to ask the legislature for money to switch them over to clean water. You cannot be trusted, and I got to tell you, you need to resign.